Welcome to my channel, a lead that bring your story about the love of a mafia boss. Now let's listen.
The espresso machine's hiss punctuated the evening like an angry cat, steam rising in wispy tendrils that disappeared into the dim lighting of Cafe Milano. I wiped my damp hands on the black apron tied too tightly around my waist. My fourth double shift this week, evident in the dark circles beneath my eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. My reflection in the polished chrome of the machine showed a woman I barely recognized anymore, hollow-cheeked, exhausted, invisible to the world except when someone needed their cup refilled. "Order up, Ellie." Marco, our perpetually irritated chef, slammed the bell with unnecessary force, making me flinch. I balanced the plates along my arms with practiced precision, the weight familiar after years of carrying other people's needs. The cafe smelled of garlic, butter, and the lingering cologne of businessmen who thought their tips were generous when they barely covered my bus fare home. Rain pattered against the windows, turning Chicago's October evening into a watercolor of streetlights and hurried shadows. That's when I first noticed him. He sat alone in the corner booth, the one reserved for special guests, though I hadn't seen Marco escort anyone there. The stranger's presence seemed to bend the air around him, commanding attention, while simultaneously deflecting it. His suit wasn't just expensive, it was different, tailored to his broad shoulders in a way that spoke of European craftsmanship. Even from across the room, I could see his hands, strong, deliberate, adorned only with a single gold signet ring that caught the light when he turned the page of a leather-bound notebook. "Table 7's been waiting 15 minutes, hissed Diane, the senior waitress who never let me forget I was one mistake away from unemployment. "Stop daydreaming." I delivered the plates with apologies and forced smiles before approaching the corner booth, my heart inexplicably racing. As I drew closer, I caught his scent. Something woodsy and exclusive, nothing like the department store samples my ex used to douse himself with. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to Cafe Milano." My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "Can I get you something to drink while you look at the menu?" He looked up, and my practiced waitress smile froze. His eyes were amber-flecked, watchful like a predator's, surrounded by laughter lines that suggested warmth his expression didn't currently offer. Beneath perfectly groomed dark hair that showed the barest traces of silver at the temples, his face could have belonged on a Renaissance painting. All sharp angles and perfect proportions. "Barolo," he said, his accent subtle but unmistakably Italian, each syllable deliberate. "Your oldest vintage." I hesitated. "I'm sorry, sir. I'll have to check if we—" "Marco keeps it for special occasions." The stranger didn't smile, but something shifted in his expression. "Tell him it's for Alessio." The name rippled through the restaurant, though he'd spoken quietly. I noticed for the first time that Marco was watching our interaction with unusual intensity from the kitchen doorway. The normally loud dining room had subtly quieted, conversations continuing but with a new awareness, like prey animals sensing a wolf among them. I nodded and retreated, feeling his eyes follow me across the room. Marco intercepted me before I reached the bar, his face uncharacteristically pale. "Whatever he wants, Ellie, he gets. Understand? The best table, the best service." He gripped my arm with surprising strength. "And for God's sake, don't stare at him. Who is he?" I whispered. Marco's laugh held no humor. "Someone who could buy this entire block and turn it to dust on a whim. Just serve him and keep your head down." I returned with a wine that cost more than my monthly rent, pouring it with hands that trembled slightly despite my best efforts. When our fingers brushed as I handed him the glass, an electric jolt shot through me. His hand was warm, the skin unexpectedly smooth except for calluses I couldn't identify. "Thank you." His eyes lingered on my face, then dropped to my name tag, Eliana. The way he pronounced my full name, not the shortened version everyone used, sent a shiver down my spine. No one had called me Eliana since my grandmother passed away. "Just Ellie is fine," I said, immediately regretting the correction when his eyebrow arched slightly. "I prefer Eliana." There was no room for negotiation in his tone. "It suits you better." The rest of my shift passed in a strange haze of awareness. No matter what table I served, my attention remained tethered to the corner booth where Alessio sat, occasionally speaking in rapid Italian into a sleek black phone, his voice too low to catch actual words. Twice, men in dark suits entered, spoke briefly with him, and left without ordering. The second man slipped him a small envelope that disappeared inside his jacket. By 11, the restaurant had emptied, except for his table. Marco had already sent the kitchen staff home, but insisted I stay until our mysterious guest decided to leave. I wiped down tables and restocked silverware, hyper-aware of being watched, but not brave enough to meet his gaze directly. The bell over the door jangled harshly, breaking the silence. 3 men stumbled in, their loud voices and unsteady movements marking them as drunk before I even caught the sour smell of alcohol that accompanied them. "Kitchen's closed," I said automatically, moving toward them to block their path further into the restaurant. "We don't want food, sweetheart." The tallest one grinned, revealing a gold tooth. "Just a little conversation," I felt rather than saw Alessio shift in his seat. "I'm sorry, sir, but we're closing. You'll need to leave." I kept my voice professional despite the sudden dryness in my mouth. The second man, wearing a leather jacket with too many zippers, stepped closer. "Don't be like that. We just want to sit a while, right, boys?" Marco emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands nervously on a towel. "Gentlemen, please. We're closed." "Shut up, old man," snapped Zipper Jacket, his eyes never leaving my face. "We're talking to the pretty lady here." I took an instinctive step backward, bumping into a table. The water glasses I'd just filled wobbled dangerously. "Leave." The single word cut through the tension, quiet but carrying the force of a gunshot. Alessio hadn't risen from his seat, hadn't raised his voice, but the command in that one word was unmistakable. For the first time, the drunk men seemed to notice him, their bloodshot eyes widening as they took in his presence. "Mind your own business, fancy suit," said Goldtooth, though with noticeably less confidence. In one fluid motion, Alessio stood, revealing his full height and the athletic build his tailored jacket had partially concealed. I won't repeat myself. I should have been relieved to have a defender. But something in his posture, the controlled violence of a cobra preparing to strike, frightened me more than the drunks. This wasn't a man used to being disobeyed. What happened next occurred so quickly I had trouble processing it. Goldtooth reached inside his jacket. A metallic glint caught the light. A gun. My body moved before my mind could catch up, years of protecting my younger siblings from our mother's violent boyfriends triggering an instinctive response. I lunged forward, shoving Alessio aside just as a deafening crack split the air. Fire erupted in my shoulder, a white-hot poker of pain that stole my breath and sent me stumbling backward. I heard more than felt the impact as my body hit the hardwood floor, the ceiling spinning above me as warm wetness spread across my chest. More gunshots followed, 3 in rapid succession, but they sounded distant, underwater. Shouting, the crash of furniture, running footsteps. Through it all, I remained strangely detached, watching red bloom across my white blouse with academic interest. Then Alessio's face appeared above me, his features transformed by a rage so pure it seemed to radiate heat. Gone was the controlled businessman, replaced by something ancient and terrifying. He barked orders in Italian, his hands, now stained with my blood, cradling my face with incongruous gentleness. "Eliana?" he said, my name a prayer and a curse simultaneously. "Why would you do that?" "Stupid, brave girl." I tried to answer, but could only cough, tasting copper. "Don't speak." His thumb brushed my cheekbone. "Help is coming. Stay with me." The last thing I registered before darkness claimed me was the press of his lips against my forehead, and his whispered promise. "I will burn this city to the ground if you leave me now." I didn't understand why a stranger would care if I lived or died. I didn't understand the possessive fury in his voice. But as consciousness slipped away, I knew with absolute certainty that I'd made a terrible mistake. Not in taking that bullet, but in drawing the attention of a man who looked at me like I was already his. The chaos of sirens and shouting faded, replaced by the steady rhythm of Alessio's heartbeat against my cheek as he lifted me into his arms. My last conscious thought was that I'd never felt so fragile and so safe at the same time, a contradiction that would come to define my entire existence from this moment forward. I drifted through fragments of consciousness like scattered puzzle pieces. Bright lights, urgent voices, the antiseptic smell of hospital corridors. Pain ebbed and flowed, sometimes distant, sometimes so sharp it jolted me from the comfortable darkness. Through it all, one constant remained, the sensation of someone holding my hand, a warm anchor in a sea of confusion. When I finally opened my eyes fully, sunlight filtered through Venetian blinds, casting prison bar shadows across unfamiliar walls. This wasn't a hospital room, at least not like any I'd seen before. The space was expansive, with high ceilings and what looked like genuine artwork hanging on soft blue walls. Fresh flowers perfumed the air, their vibrant colors almost offensive against the sterile whites and creams of medical equipment. "You're awake." The deep voice startled me. I turned my head, even that small movement sending ripples of pain across my shoulder, to find Alessio sitting beside the bed. He'd exchanged his suit for dark jeans and a simple black button-down with rolled sleeves, revealing forearms corded with muscle and adorned with a single elegant watch. Despite the casual clothes, he radiated the same dangerous energy I remembered from the restaurant. "Where am I?" My voice emerged as a rasp, my throat desert dry. He reached for a glass of water on the bedside table, his movements precise and controlled as he held it to my lips. "My home. Private wing." I sipped gratefully, trying to process his words. "Private? Hospital wing? In your house?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "When you need medical attention as often as my associates do, it becomes a necessary investment." The water caught in my throat as memories flooded back. The gun, the searing pain, the sound of more shots after I fell. "The men who came in," I started, "are no longer a concern." His expression hardened, amber eyes turning to flint. "One is dead. The others will wish they were, once they're found." A chill swept through me despite the plush blankets covering my body. The casual way he spoke of violence should have terrified me. Instead, I found myself more disturbed by my lack of horror. "How long have I been here?" 3 days. His jaw tightened. "You lost a significant amount of blood. The bullet missed major arteries but damaged muscle tissue. The doctor says you were lucky." Lucky wasn't the word I would have chosen. I attempted to sit up, gasping as pain lanced through my left shoulder. Instantly, his hands were there, supporting me with surprising gentleness, arranging pillows behind my back. "You need to rest," he said, his face uncomfortably close to mine. "Recovery will take time. I need to call work," I said, suddenly panicked. "Marco will fire me if I don't—" Alessio's laugh cut me off, a sound both genuine and unsettling. "Marco will not fire you. The restaurant is closed indefinitely for renovations, which it desperately needed anyway." The casual way he spoke of my workplace closing sent another wave of anxiety through me. My job at Cafe Milano barely covered my bills, but it was all I had. "I can't afford to lose that job," I whispered, hating the weakness in my voice. "I have rent due next week and my sister's tuition payment. Your financial concerns are resolved." He said it simply, as though informing me it might rain later. "Your apartment has been paid through the year. Your sister's education is covered. Your mother's medical bills are settled." I stared at him, unable to process what he was saying. How did he even know about my family? About my mother's chronic health problems that had devoured my savings and driven me into debt? "Why would you do that?" My voice trembled between gratitude and suspicion. "You don't know me." Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "You took a bullet meant for me, Eliana. In my world, that creates a debt that can never truly be repaid." "I didn't know what I was doing," I admitted. "It was instinct." "Precisely why it matters." He leaned forward, his gaze intensifying. "Anyone can perform calculated heroics when weighing potential rewards. True character reveals itself in split-second decisions. You protected a stranger at risk to yourself." His hand moved to my face, fingertips tracing my cheekbone with a delicacy that belied their strength. "Do you have any idea how rare that is?" I wanted to look away but found myself trapped in his gaze. Up close, I could see flecks of gold in his irises, the faint scar bisecting his left eyebrow, the day's stubble darkening his jaw. He was older than I'd initially thought, late 30s perhaps, with fine lines etched by experiences I couldn't begin to imagine. A discreet knock at the door broke the moment. Alessio straightened immediately, his expression closing like shutters. "Enter," he called, voice shifting to something harder. A man in a tailored suit stepped in, nodding respectfully to Alessio before his eyes flickered to me with undisguised curiosity. "Sorry to interrupt, boss. Matteo's here with the information you requested." "I'll be right out," Alessio replied, dismissing him with a slight gesture. The man retreated, closing the door silently behind him. "Boss?" I echoed, feeling suddenly small in the large bed. Alessio studied me for a long moment, calculation evident behind his steady gaze. "I think you've realized I'm not simply a restaurant patron, Eliana." "Who are you?" I asked, though I wasn't certain I wanted the answer. He stood, smoothing non-existent wrinkles from his shirt. "Rest now. We'll talk more when you're stronger." "No." The firmness in my voice surprised us both. "I'm lying in your home, apparently indebted to you for things I never asked for. I deserve to know who you are." For a heartbeat, anger flashed across his features, the instinctive reaction of a man unaccustomed to being challenged. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his face from intimidating to devastating. "Alessio Ricci," he said, inclining his head slightly as though we were being formally introduced at a cocktail party, rather than in a sick room. "My family oversees certain business interests throughout the Midwest." The deliberate vagueness wasn't lost on me. "You're in the Mafia." His smile didn't falter, though it took on an edge. Such an American term. "We prefer famiglia." Family. A hysterical laugh bubbled up from my chest, sending fresh pain through my shoulder. "I took a bullet for a Mafia boss. This can't be happening. And yet, here we are." He checked his watch. "I must attend to some matters. Paolo will be outside your door if you need anything. Try to rest." "Wait," I called as he reached the door. "When can I go home?" He paused, his back to me, shoulders tensing almost imperceptibly. "When it's safe." "Safe from what?" He turned, his expression unreadable. "The men who came to the restaurant weren't random drunks, Eliana. They were sent by someone who wants me dead. Someone who now knows your face." Cold dread settled in my stomach. "Because I helped you. Because you saved me." His voice softened. "And in doing so, you placed yourself in a game with rules you don't understand, and players who won't hesitate to use you against me. I never asked to be part of your world," I whispered. "Few do." His smile held no humor now, yet here you are, regardless. After he left, I sank back against the pillows, mind racing despite the medication dulling my senses. Outside my window lay a manicured garden surrounded by high stone walls. Beyond those walls was my life, modest and struggling, but mine. Somehow, I knew returning to it would be far from simple. Sleep claimed me eventually, dragging me into dreams where I ran through endless corridors, pursued by faceless men, while Alessio watched from the shadows, waiting to catch me when I fell. I woke to darkness, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. A small lamp glowed softly on the bedside table, illuminating a tray with covered dishes. The smell of food made my stomach growl, reminding me I hadn't eaten a proper meal in days. As I reached for the tray, movement in the corner of the room startled me. Alessio sat in a leather armchair, reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed documents. He looked up at my movement, removing the glasses in one smooth motion. "You should eat," he said, nodding toward the tray. "The doctor says you need to regain your strength." "Have you been watching me sleep?" I asked, unsure whether to be disturbed or comforted by his presence. "Not continuously." He set his papers aside. "I have a business to run." "Right, your business." I couldn't keep the sarcasm from my voice as I uncovered a bowl of what appeared to be homemade soup, steam rising in fragrant tendrils. He observed me with that unnerving stillness. "You disapprove. Of organized crime?" "Generally, yes." "Yet you saved the life of a man you suspected was dangerous." I sipped the soup, rich chicken broth with delicate pasta, buying time to consider my response. I didn't think about it. I saw someone in danger and reacted. "Exactly." He leaned forward. "Pure instinct. No calculation. It's what makes you exceptional." The intensity in his voice made me uncomfortable. I focused on my soup, avoiding his eyes. I'm not exceptional. I'm a waitress with a mountain of debt and a bullet hole in my shoulder. Not anymore. My spoon clattered against the bowl. What does that mean? He stood, moving to the foot of my bed with that predatory grace that seemed to be his default. It means your life as you knew it is over, Eliana. Whether you intended it or not, you've been drawn into my world. I don't want to be in your world, I protested. Few choices remain once you've saved a man like me. His hands gripped the footboard, knuckles whitening slightly. There are protocols, expectations. You're now under my protection, which means you're also under my authority. I'm not yours to command, I said, heart racing at the implied threat beneath his words. Something darkened in his expression. Everything in my territory is mine to command. I'm not a thing, I whispered, fear and indignation battling within me. He moved suddenly, circling the bed until he loomed over me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. No, you're not a thing. You're infinitely more valuable and more dangerous. Without warning, he sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress dipping under his weight. His hand captured my chin, tilting my face up to meet his gaze. Do you know what happens to people who save the lives of men in my position, Eliana? I shook my head slightly, constrained by his grip. They become liabilities, potential weaknesses that enemies can exploit. His thumb traced my lower lip, the touch so light it might have been imaginary. The smart move would be to eliminate that liability. Fear constricted my throat. Are you going to kill me? The question hung between us, heavy with possibility. Then Alessio laughed, the sound warming the room despite its edge of danger. Kill you? No, little lioness. I'm going to keep you. His hand slid from my chin to cup my cheek, the gesture possessive yet oddly tender. Close to me, where I can ensure your safety, where no one can use you against me, where I can watch over what's mine. I'm not yours, I repeated, though the words sounded hollow, even to my ears. His smile was that of a predator, who knows its prey is already cornered. You became mine the moment you stepped between me and that bullet. The sooner you accept that reality, the easier your adjustment will be. And if I refuse to accept it, I challenged, recklessness born of fear making me brave. His expression softened, thumb brushing away a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. Then we have a problem, Eliana, because while I admire your spirit, I will not risk your safety, or mine, by allowing you to walk away. The gentle touch belied the steel in his words. I was trapped in a golden cage, held by a man whose tenderness was as terrifying as his cruelty might be. Get some rest, he murmured, rising from the bed. Tomorrow, when you're stronger, we'll discuss your new position. Position? I echoed. He paused at the door, silhouetted against the hallway light. Everyone in my household serves a purpose, Eliana. Even you. As the door closed behind him, I realized I had exchanged one form of servitude for another, from waitress to whatever Alessio Ricci decided I would become. The difference was that at Cafe Milano, I could quit. Something told me that walking away from Alessio wouldn't be nearly so simple. Morning arrived with a gentle knock and the entrance of a slender woman in a crisp uniform, carrying fresh towels and a garment bag. Good morning, Miss Eliana. I am Sofia, she said, her Italian accent more pronounced than Alessio's. Mr. Ricci asked me to help you prepare for the day. Prepare for what? I asked, struggling to sit up. Sofia smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. Mr. Ricci wishes to introduce you to the household staff this afternoon. He thought you might appreciate assistance with bathing, given your injury. The thought of meeting staff, while looking like a hospital patient, made me grimace. I nodded gratefully, allowing Sofia to help me from the bed. My legs trembled, weak from disuse, and my shoulder throbbed despite the medication coursing through my system. The bathroom attached to my room was obscenely luxurious, all marble and gold fixtures, with a walk-in shower that could have fit my entire apartment bathroom inside it. Sofia helped me undress, her professional demeanor never wavering, despite the ugly bruising that spread from my bandaged shoulder down my side like watercolor on wet paper. How many people work here? I asked as she washed my hair, careful to keep soap from my wound. At the main house? 22, she replied. plus security rotation. Main house? I echoed, trying to imagine a place large enough to require 22 staff members. Sophia hesitated before answering. Mr. Ricci owns several properties. This is his primary residence in Chicago. After the bath, she helped me into unfamiliar clothes, silk pajamas and a cashmere robe that slipped like water against my skin. The garments fit perfectly, raising uncomfortable questions about how Alessio knew my size. These aren't mine, I said. Mr. Ricci had them delivered yesterday. Sophia brushed my hair with gentle strokes. He's very attentive to details. The way she said it suggested this attentiveness wasn't always directed toward clothing. I swallowed my next question, unsure I wanted the answer. Sophia led me not back to bed, but to a chaise lounge positioned by the window where sunlight illuminated a beautiful garden beyond. The grounds extended far beyond what I'd glimpsed yesterday, with manicured lawns giving way to what appeared to be a small orchard in the distance. Would you like breakfast now? Sophia asked, arranging pillows to support my injured side. My stomach growled in response. Yes, please. She returned minutes later with a tray of pastries, fresh fruit, and coffee that smelled divine. As I ate, I caught sight of movement in the garden below. Alessio, dressed in athletic clothes, sparring with a younger man on a gravel terrace. Even from a distance, the controlled power in his movements was mesmerizing. He moved like someone who had spent a lifetime learning how to hurt people efficiently. He trains every morning, Sophia said, following my gaze. No matter where in the world he is. Who is he fighting with? Marco, his nephew and head of security, as she paused. Something like warning in her tone. Mr. Ricci is very protective of his family. Before I could ask more, the sparring session ended. Alessio clapped the younger man on the shoulder, then glanced up, directly at my window. Even from this distance, I felt the weight of his gaze. He raised a hand in greeting, a gesture so normal it seemed out of place coming from him. Sophia cleared her throat. I'll return in an hour to help you dress for your meeting. Left alone, I sipped my coffee and tried to make sense of my situation. 3 days ago, I'd been a waitress worried about making rent. Now I was recuperating in a Mafia boss's mansion, wearing clothes that probably cost more than my monthly salary, about to be introduced to the household. The surreality of it all hit me in waves. I was still contemplating my bizarre circumstances when the bedroom door opened without a knock. Alessio entered, freshly showered, his hair damp and curling slightly at the temples. He'd exchanged his workout clothes for dark slacks and a light blue button-down. The sleeves rolled to expose those same muscular forearms I'd noticed yesterday. You're looking better today, he said, assessing me with a sweep of his gaze that felt almost physical. How's the pain? Manageable, I replied, suddenly conscious of my casual attire. Thank you for the clothes. They suit you. He moved to the window, standing close enough that I caught the scent of his soap, something citrusy and expensive. Did you sleep well? As well as can be expected. I set down my coffee cup, needing something to do with my hands. Sophia mentioned you want me to meet the staff? He nodded, still looking out at the garden. They need to know your position in this household. There was that word again, position. And what exactly is my position? He turned to face me, expression unreadable. That depends on you. I don't understand. My enemies believe you're significant to me. He stated this like an irrefutable fact. After what happened at the restaurant, your connection to me has been noted. Whether you like it or not, you're now perceived as valuable or dangerous, depending on who's looking. I swallowed hard. Because I saved your life. Because you saved my life without knowing who I was. His eyes darkened. If you had known, your actions could be interpreted as serving your own interests, but you didn't know. You acted purely to protect another human being, at great risk to yourself. He moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the confined space. Such selflessness is rare in my world. It makes you both precious and a target. I don't want to be either, I whispered. What you want ceased to matter the moment that bullet entered your shoulder. His voice remained gentle despite the harshness of his words. Now, we must deal with what is. And what is that exactly? I asked, unable to keep frustration from my voice. You have 3 options. He counted them off on his fingers. 1. You join my household in an official capacity, perhaps as my personal assistant. You would have protection, comfort, and my resources at your disposal. What would I have to do as your assistant? I couldn't keep suspicion from my tone. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Nothing inappropriate, Eliana. I don't force women into my bed. Heat flooded my cheeks. I didn't mean— You did, he interrupted. And it's a fair concern. But I'm a businessman, not a monster. My assistant manages my schedule, handles correspondence, accompanies me to certain functions. It's a position of trust. And the second option? I asked, eager to change the subject. You leave. His expression hardened. With a new identity, in a new city, under my distant protection. You'd never return to Chicago or contact your family again, my heart stuttered. That's not an option. My sister needs me. My mother would be provided for, he finished. But you'd never see them again. It's the only way to ensure their safety as well as yours. Panic clawed at my throat. You said there were 3 options. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. The third option isn't really an option at all. If you refuse the first 2, if you attempt to return to your old life without precautions, my enemies will find you. They will use you to get to me, and they will not be kind. The clinical way he described my potential torture or death sent ice through my veins. So I either work for you or disappear forever. Put simply, yes. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear with surprising tenderness, though I hope you'll see it as more than mere employment. I protect what's mine, Eliana. My family, my people. Those under my care want for nothing. Except freedom, I said quietly. His hand lingered near my face. Freedom is an illusion. We're all bound by something. Poverty, obligation, fear. I'm merely offering golden chains instead of iron ones. Before I could respond, another knock sounded at the door. Alessio stepped back, calling permission to enter. Sophia appeared, arms laden with clothing. Everything is ready downstairs, Mr. Ricci. Thank you, Sophia. He turned back to me. I'll leave you to dress. Join me in the study when you're ready. Sophia will show you the way. After he left, Sophia laid out the clothes on my bed. A simple but elegant navy blue dress, soft leather flats, and delicate underwear that still had price tags attached, all in my exact size. He had these delivered from Neiman Marcus yesterday, she explained, helping me out of the robe. Mr. Ricci said you would prefer something comfortable but appropriate. The fact that he'd thought about what I might prefer was oddly touching, despite the circumstances. Sophia helped me dress, careful of my injured shoulder, then guided me through a maze of hallways that confirmed the enormous scale of the house. We passed artwork that belonged in museums, antique furniture that whispered of old money, and security cameras disguised as architectural elements. The 2 guards we encountered nodded respectfully as we passed, their eyes cataloging me with professional assessment. Sophia stopped before a heavy wooden door, knocked once, then opened it without waiting for a response. Miss Eliana, sir. The study was a testament to masculine luxury. Leather furniture, dark wood paneling, and walls lined with books that appeared well-read rather than decorative. Alessio stood at a large desk, conversing quietly with 3 men who turned to stare as I entered. Thank you, Sophia, Alessio said, dismissing her with a nod before approaching me. Eliana, I'd like you to meet some of my associates. The introductions passed in a blur. Marco, the nephew I'd seen sparring earlier, Antonio, an older man whose silver hair and expensive suit exuded authority, and Vincent, whose American accent stood out among the Italian voices. All 3 men examined me with barely concealed curiosity. Gentlemen, Alessio said once the formalities concluded, Eliana will be joining my household as my personal assistant. She is to be afforded every courtesy and protection. Is that understood? The men murmured agreement, though I caught the significant look that passed between Antonio and Vincent. Sir, Antonio ventured, perhaps we should discuss the Rossi matter before. Later. Alessio cut him off, his tone brooking no argument. For now, I'd like a moment alone with Eliana. The men filed out, Marco pausing to squeeze Alessio's shoulder in what seemed a gesture of support or warning. When the door closed behind them, Alessio gestured toward a leather sofa. Please sit. You shouldn't be on your feet too long. I sank into the soft leather, overwhelmed by the morning's events. I don't recall agreeing to be your assistant. He poured 2 glasses of water from a crystal decanter, handing me one before sitting opposite me. Would you prefer I introduced you as my hostage? Despite everything, a startled laugh escaped me. Is that humor, Mr. Ricci? Alessio, he corrected, a smile softening his features. And yes, contrary to popular belief, men in my position occasionally appreciate irony. I sipped my water, buying time. You announced my position without consulting me. A necessary formality. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. My organization operates on clear hierarchies. Ambiguity creates vulnerability. By establishing your role, I've placed you under my direct protection, which means anyone who harms you answers to me personally. The implication hung between us, and if I still want to leave, then say so, and arrangements will be made. His expression remained neutral, but something in his eyes tightened, though I hope you'll give this arrangement a chance. Why? I asked, genuinely curious. You could have any assistant you wanted. Why keep a waitress with no qualifications who knows nothing about your world? He studied me for a long moment, as though deciding how much to reveal. Several reasons. First, practicality. You've already seen too much. Second, appearances. My reputation would suffer if I failed to reward someone who saved my life. And third, he paused, something shifting in his expression. You intrigue me, Eliana. Your selflessness, your courage, these are rare qualities. His candor surprised me. That's it? I'm an interesting specimen to study? No. He set down his glass with deliberate care. You're also a beautiful woman who looked at me without fear or calculation, at least initially. Do you know how rarely that happens in my position? Heat crept up my neck at his directness. I'm afraid of you now. Are you? He raised an eyebrow. Or are you afraid of your circumstances? The distinction felt important somehow. Before I could formulate a response, a discreet knock interrupted us. Come, Alessio called. Marco entered, his expression grim. Sorry to interrupt, Uncle. There's a situation that requires immediate attention. Alessio stood immediately. What kind of situation? Rossi's men were spotted near Eliana's apartment building. They've been asking questions about her. Marco's eyes flicked to me briefly. They know she survived. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Alessio's posture shifted subtly, the businessman replaced by something more dangerous. How many? 4 that we identified, probably more watching. Put Stefano's team on surveillance. I want to know everyone who goes in or out of that building. Alessio's voice remained calm, but his hands had clenched into fists. And double security here. No one enters the grounds without my explicit approval. Marco nodded, retreating from the study without another word. Alessio remained motionless for several seconds, staring at the closed door with an expression that sent chills down my spine. Who's Rossi? I asked, breaking the heavy silence. He turned slowly, his face a careful mask once more. Someone who wants what I have, and that includes me now? The thought made my stomach turn. That includes you. He crossed to a cabinet, withdrawing a leather folder. Which brings us back to your decision. I need your answer, Eliana. Now. The choice wasn't really a choice at all, but I couldn't bring myself to say the words he wanted to hear. I need to talk to my sister first, to explain why I've disappeared. Something softened in his expression. Of course. Family is important. Can I see her? I asked, hope flaring briefly. Not yet. He held up a hand to forestall my protest. It's too dangerous while Rossi's men are watching. But you can call her, from a secure line, with certain precautions. It was less than I wanted, but more than I expected. Thank you. He nodded, opening the folder to reveal what appeared to be a contract. Then you agree to stay, at least temporarily? The document before me was written in legal language too complex to quickly understand, but the title was clear. Private Employment Agreement. What exactly does this commit me to? I asked, scanning the dense paragraphs. Standard terms of employment, confidentiality, loyalty, duties as my assistant. He pointed to several highlighted sections. Generous compensation, healthcare, security provisions. Nothing inappropriate or illegal required of you. And if I want to leave eventually, there's a termination clause. His finger traced down to the final page. 3 months' notice, relocation assistance, lifetime security consultation, all quite civilized. I looked up from the contract to find him watching me intently, his eyes revealing nothing of his thoughts. Why are you being so reasonable about this? You could just force me to stay. I could, he acknowledged. But willing loyalty is far more valuable than coerced submission. I want you to choose this, Eliana. The pen he offered felt heavier than it should. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for it, my mind racing through limited options. Stay and become entangled in a world of violence and power, or flee and abandon everything and everyone I loved. If I sign this, I said slowly, I want regular contact with my family, and protection for them too. Done. He didn't hesitate. Anything else? I took a deep breath. I want your word that you won't ask me to do anything that violates my conscience. Something like respect flickered in his eyes. You have it. I never intended to corrupt you, Eliana. Your moral compass is precisely what makes you valuable. With a sense of sealing my fate, I signed the contract. Alessio took the pen from my fingers, his hand lingering against mine for a moment too long to be accidental. Welcome to the family, Eliana. The way he said it sounded more like a claim than a greeting. As he signed beside my name, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just traded one prison for another. Only this one had gilded bars and a jailer whose intentions remained dangerously unclear. 2 weeks passed in a strange limbo of recovery and adjustment. My shoulder healed gradually, pain fading to a dull ache that flared only with sudden movements. Sophia helped me exercise the damaged muscles each morning, following the regimen prescribed by Alessio's private doctor, who visited every 3rd day. My new role as personal assistant remained largely theoretical while I recovered, though Alessio began including me in certain aspects of his legitimate business. I learned that beneath the criminal enterprise lay a vast network of legal companies, real estate holdings, import-export businesses, technology investments, and hospitality ventures that spanned several continents. Most of what I do is perfectly legal, he explained one afternoon as we reviewed property acquisitions in his study. The other activities simply expedite processes that bureaucracy tends to complicate. I had carefully avoided asking direct questions about those other activities, maintaining a deliberate ignorance that Alessio seemed to respect. He never discussed violence in my presence, though I occasionally caught fragments of conversations that fell silent when I entered rooms. My promised phone call to my sister happened my 3rd day in the mansion, under Alessio's watchful eye. I fabricated a story about a job opportunity with a private client, technically true, if misleading, and promised to visit soon. The relief in Amy's voice had brought tears to my eyes, especially when she mentioned that someone had anonymously paid off our mother's medical bills. It's like a miracle, Ellie, she'd said, excitement bubbling through the phone line. Mom can finally get that surgery she's been putting off. The hospital said everything's covered, past and future treatments. I'd glanced at Alessio, who pretended absorption in his laptop screen while obviously listening to every word. The knowledge that he could grant such life-changing assistance with a single command was both comforting and terrifying. That evening marked my first dinner with Alessio outside my room. He'd insisted I join him in the formal dining room, though he dismissed the staff after they served our meal. You've been cooped up too long, he said, pouring wine into crystal glasses that caught the candlelight. Besides, we should celebrate your recovery. I'm hardly recovered, I replied, gesturing to the sling still supporting my arm. But improving. His eyes softened in the dim light. You're stronger than you know, Eliana. Throughout dinner, I found myself increasingly conscious of his gaze, the way it lingered when I spoke, how it traced the movement of my hand as I raised my wine glass. I'd noticed his attractiveness from the first moment in the restaurant, but proximity had only intensified its effect. The dangerous edge that surrounded him like an aura should have repelled me. Instead, I found myself drawn to the contradictions he embodied, ruthless in business, yet surprisingly gentle with me, commanding with his subordinates, yet attentive to my comfort. Tell me about your family, he said as we finished our meal, settling back with a glass of amber liquor. You rarely speak of them. The request seemed innocuous, but instinct told me to be cautious. There's not much to tell. My sister is 19, studying nursing. My mother has lupus, which has gotten worse over the years. My father left when I was 12, and you became the provider. It wasn't a question. I nodded, uncomfortable with his perception. Someone had to pay the bills. You sacrificed your own opportunities. Again, not a question. I did what was necessary. I studied his expression, trying to understand his interest. Why do you want to know this? He swirled his drink thoughtfully. I'm trying to understand you, the woman who would step in front of a bullet for a stranger. I told you, it was instinct. Born from years of protecting others. He leaned forward, eyes intent. You've spent your life shielding people, haven't you? Your mother from financial ruin. Your sister from missed opportunities. Even your customers at the restaurant. I watched you for weeks before that night, the way you diffused situations, managed difficult patrons, protected the younger staff. My pulse quickened. You were watching me before the shooting? A faint smile touched his lips. Cafe Milano has excellent risotto. I have a standing reservation every Tuesday. I never noticed you before that night, I said, then winced at how that sounded. You weren't meant to. His smile deepened, revealing a dimple in his right cheek I hadn't noticed before. Though I noticed you immediately, the waitress who treated everyone with equal respect, regardless of their tab, who slipped extra bread to the old man who ordered only soup, who absorbed Diane's pettiness without complaint. Discomfort crept along my spine. How often were you there? Often enough to know your extraordinary in ordinary circumstances. He set down his glass with careful precision. Which makes me wonder how extraordinary you might be in extraordinary circumstances. Before I could respond to this unsettling observation, the dining room door opened. Marco entered, his expression tense. Sorry to interrupt, Uncle. His eyes flickered briefly to me. There's a situation that requires your attention. Alessio's demeanor shifted instantly, warmth replaced by cool authority. Excuse me, Eliana. Enjoy your dessert. I may be a while. After they left, I abandoned any pretense of eating, retreating to my room where I paced the plush carpet, my thoughts racing. Alessio had been watching me long before the shooting. Had the drunk men been part of some elaborate test? No. His rage that night had been too genuine, his concern during my recovery too consistent. Sleep eluded me that night, my mind replaying every interaction with Alessio, searching for hidden motives. Dawn found me exhausted but resolved. I needed more information about the man who now controlled my life. Over the following days, I began paying closer attention to the household rhythms. I noted which staff members seemed most approachable, which areas of the mansion saw the heaviest security, which times Alessio was most likely to be occupied with business. Sophia proved a valuable, if reluctant, source of information. While helping me dress one morning, she mentioned that she'd worked for the Ricci family for 15 years. You must know Alessio well, I ventured, keeping my tone casual. Her hands paused briefly at my shoulder. Mr. Ricci is a private man. But fair? I pressed. As an employer, I mean. She resumed her task, securing the sling with practiced movements. More than fair. When my husband became ill 3 years ago, Mr. Ricci arranged specialists from Europe, paid for experimental treatments not covered by insurance. Gabriele is alive because of him. The genuine gratitude in her voice wasn't what I expected. He takes care of his people. Loyalty flows both ways in this house, she said, meeting my eyes in the mirror. Remember that, Miss Eliana. The warning, or advice, lingered as I made my way to Alessio's study for what had become our morning routine. He would review overnight reports while I organized his correspondence and schedule, learning the complex web of his business interests. I found him standing at the window, phone pressed to his ear, tension evident in the set of his shoulders. He acknowledged my entrance with a slight nod, but continued his conversation in rapid Italian. Though I couldn't understand the words, the cold anger in his tone required no translation. When he finally ended the call, he remained silent for several moments, staring out at the garden. Is everything all right? I asked, setting my tablet on his desk. Rossi's men made another attempt to access your apartment yesterday. His voice was eerily calm. They were dissuaded by my security team. A chill ran through me. What does that mean? He turned, his expression carefully neutral. It means the situation is escalating. Rossi senses weakness. Because of me. The realization settled like lead in my stomach. Not because of you, he corrected sharply. Because of what you represent. Which is what exactly? He approached slowly, stopping close enough that I had to tilt my head to maintain eye contact. A change in pattern. For years, I've maintained certain boundaries. No attachments outside the family. No vulnerabilities that could be exploited. I'm not an attachment, I protested. I'm your employee. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. We both know you're more than that, Eliana. My heart stuttered at his directness. I don't understand what you want from me. Neither do I. The admission seemed to cost him something. Which is precisely the problem. Before I could respond, Marco appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. They found Stefano. Alessio's entire demeanor transformed, a cold mask sliding into place. Where? Abandoned warehouse near the river. He's alive, but barely. They're bringing him in now. Prepare the medical wing. Alessio grabbed his jacket from the back of his chair. And call Vittorio. Tell him to bring everything. This wasn't a random attack. As he moved toward the door, he paused beside me. Stay in your room until I come for you. Lock the door. Open it only for Sophia or myself. What's happening? I asked, fear closing my throat. His hand brushed my cheek briefly. Nothing you need to concern yourself with. Just stay safe. After he left, I returned to my room as instructed, but anxiety made confinement unbearable. Hours passed with no word. Twice I heard hurried footsteps in the corridor, urgent voices speaking in Italian. When Sophia brought lunch, her usual warmth was replaced with distracted efficiency. Is Stefano all right? I asked as she turned to leave. She paused, conflict evident in her expression. The doctors are with him. Who is he? I pressed. Why would someone hurt him? Sophia glanced at the door, then lowered her voice. He was watching your apartment building. One of Mr. Ricci's most trusted security men. The implication hit like a physical blow. Someone hurt him because of me? Not because of you, she echoed Alessio's earlier words. Because of his loyalty to Mr. Ricci. After she left, guilt and fear warred within me. A man was fighting for his life because he'd been protecting me. Or rather, protecting Alessio's interest in me. The artificial bubble I'd been living in for 2 weeks suddenly felt dangerously thin. Night fell, with still no word from Alessio. I dozed fitfully in a chair by the window, startling awake at every distant sound. Near midnight, my door opened without a knock. Alessio stood in the threshold, his appearance shocking after the polished businessman I'd grown accustomed to. His shirt was wrinkled, sleeves rolled to reveal forearms smudged with what looked disturbingly like dried blood. His jaw darkened with stubble, and his eyes held a coldness that made me shrink back involuntarily. You should be sleeping, he said, his voice rough with exhaustion. Is Stefano alive? I asked, rising from the chair. Something shifted in his expression. Yes, he'll recover, eventually. Relief flooded me, followed immediately by fresh fear at the implications of eventually. What happened to him? Alessio closed the door, moving to pour himself a drink from the crystal decanter kept on my sideboard. Nothing you need to know about. I think I do need to know, I insisted. Courage born of fatigue and frustration. If people are being tortured because of me, he interrupted sharply. Make no mistake, Eliana. Stefano was targeted because he works for me. You are simply the excuse Rossi needed to escalate a conflict that's been brewing for years. Then let me go. The words escaped before I could consider their wisdom. If I'm making things worse, in 2 quick strides, he closed the distance between us, his hands grasping my upper arms with carefully restrained strength. Let you go? Now? When Rossi has proven he'll target anyone connected to me? His laugh held no humor. He would have you within hours, and he would use you in ways that would make Stefano's injuries look merciful. Fear closed my throat, Not of Alessio, but of the faceless Rossi and what he represented. What does he want? Alessio's grip gentled, one hand moving to brush hair from my face with incongruous tenderness. What all men like him want: power, territory, respect. His thumb traced my cheekbone. Me, broken or dead. The intimacy of the gesture contrasted sharply with his words, leaving me disoriented. And what do you want? Something shifted in his gaze, hardness giving way to an emotion I couldn't identify. Right now? To keep you safe. To end Rossi before he hurts anyone else under my protection. His hand slid to cup my neck, warm and possessive. And to understand why, after years of perfect control, I find myself making decisions based on a waitress who looked at me without fear. The raw honesty in his voice stripped away my defenses. I'm afraid now. No. His eyes searched mine. You're cautious, concerned, but not afraid. Not of me. That's the problem, Eliana. You should be. Morning light filtered through the curtains when I woke, momentarily disoriented. Memories of the previous night's conversation with Alessio flooded back. His blood-stained appearance, the intensity in his eyes when he'd told me I should fear him. Yet he'd left shortly after, instructing me to rest, his touch lingering on my face like a promise or a warning. The mansion hummed with unusual activity when I ventured out. Security personnel I hadn't seen before patrolled the hallways, speaking in hushed tones into discreet earpieces. In the kitchen, staff worked with nervous efficiency, barely acknowledging my presence as I helped myself to coffee. "Mr. Ricci requests your presence in his office," said a voice behind me, startling me into nearly spilling my drink. I turned to find Marco watching me with that same assessing gaze he always used, somewhere between suspicion and curiosity. Unlike his uncle, Marco made no effort to disguise his dangerous nature. The gun holstered beneath his tailored jacket was clearly visible as he gestured for me to follow him. "Is everything all right?" I asked as we walked the long corridor toward Alessio's wing of the house. Marco's sideways glance revealed nothing. "My uncle will explain." Alessio's office differed from his study. Less comfortable, more functional. Maps covered one wall, computer screens another. When we entered, he was standing at a large table with several men I recognized from previous introductions, all bent over what appeared to be blueprints. He looked up, and I was struck by the transformation from last night. Gone was the disheveled, blood-stained man with haunted eyes. This Alessio wore an impeccably tailored suit, his hair perfectly styled, his expression controlled and commanding. Only the faint shadows beneath his eyes hinted at a sleepless night. "Eliana," he acknowledged, straightening. "Thank you for coming." The other men stepped back, exchanging glances I couldn't interpret. One by one, they filed out at Alessio's slight nod, until only Marco remained. "What's happening?" I asked, unable to contain my unease any longer. Alessio's expression softened fractionally. "Circumstances have changed. We need to move you to a more secure location temporarily." "Move me?" Panic fluttered in my chest. "Where? For how long?" "My estate in Lake Como," he replied, his tone suggesting this should reassure me. "It's remote, heavily secured, and unknown to most outside my immediate circle." "Italy?" I whispered, the reality of my situation crashing down like a physical weight. "I can't go to Italy." "My family will be protected," he cut in smoothly. "I've already arranged for your mother and sister to be relocated to a private medical facility in Arizona. They believe it's part of an expanded healthcare program through your mother's insurance." The casual way he spoke of manipulating my family's lives sent anger surging through me. "You had no right to make these decisions without consulting me." "I had every right," he countered, voice hardening. "Your contract gives me full authority over security measures affecting you and your family, and after what happened to Stefano, timing became critical." Marco shifted uncomfortably, drawing my attention. "What aren't you telling me?" Alessio and his nephew exchanged a look laden with unspoken communication. After a moment, Alessio nodded. "Rossi's men left a message with Stefano," Marco explained, his voice clinical. "Photos of your sister on campus, your mother outside her doctor's office. They know exactly who matters to you." The room tilted sickeningly. "They're going to hurt my family to get to me?" "To get to me," Alessio corrected, moving around the table to stand before me. "You are my perceived weakness." By threatening you and those you love, Rossi believes he can control me. Can he? The question escaped before I could reconsider. Something dangerous flashed in Alessio's eyes. He certainly thinks so. The implication hung between us, heavy with meaning I wasn't sure I wanted to understand. Marco cleared his throat. The jet is ready whenever you are, Uncle. Security is in position at both locations. Alessio nodded. Give us a moment. After Marco left, silence stretched between us. I hugged my arms across my chest, suddenly cold despite the room's comfortable temperature. How long will we be gone? I finally asked, resignation coloring my voice. Until it's safe to return, he replied, which wasn't an answer at all. And when will that be? His expression hardened. When Rossi is no longer a threat. The clinical way he referenced eliminating another human being should have horrified me. Instead, I found myself wondering what it said about my own morality, that I felt only relief at the implied violence. I need to pack, I said, avoiding the ethical quagmire our conversation threatened to become. Sophia has prepared everything you'll need. He stepped closer, his voice softening. I understand this is difficult, Eliana, but I promise you, your family will be safe. You will be safe. But you won't be, I said, the realization dawning as I studied his face. You're sending me away while you deal with Rossi. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I'm sending you away because your presence clouds my judgment, and I need perfect clarity for what comes next. Before I could respond, he reached for my hand, his touch surprisingly gentle as he placed a small object in my palm. I looked down to find a delicate gold ring with a small ruby set in an antique filigree setting. What is this? I asked, confused by the seemingly random gift. Protection, he replied. Everyone in my inner circle wears a symbol of their connection to me. It identifies you as untouchable to those who understand the significance. I stared at the ring, understanding dawning. This marks me as your possession. As under my protection, he corrected, though his eyes told a different story. Wear it always, especially in Italy. The weight of the ring felt disproportionate to its physical size as I slipped it onto my right hand. It fit perfectly, of course. Alessio left nothing to chance. The car is waiting, he said, stepping back. Marco will accompany you to the airfield. You're not coming. I hadn't expected the sharp disappointment that accompanied the question. I'll join you in a few days, he replied, his expression carefully neutral. Business requires my presence here a little longer. The business of eliminating Rossi, I understood without him saying it explicitly. I nodded, suddenly unsure what to say and what could be our final moments if things went wrong. Alessio solved the dilemma by closing the distance between us, his hand rising to cup my face with that now familiar possessive gentleness. Be safe, Eliana. Trust no one but Marco and the staff you recognize from here. Before I could respond, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to my forehead, a benediction and a claiming all at once. The gesture left me breathless, confused by the conflicting emotions it triggered. I'll see you in Como, he murmured against my skin, then stepped back, his professional mask sliding seamlessly back into place. Marco appeared at the door as if summoned telepathically, and just like that, I was whisked away. From Chicago, from my family, from everything familiar, into a world where I existed solely as an extension of Alessio Ricci's will. The journey passed in a blur of private terminals, luxury transportation, and deferential staff who never quite met my eyes. Marco remained a constant, silent shadow, his vigilance never wavering even on the private jet where we were alone, except for the crew. It was only as we approached the Italian estate, a spectacular villa perched above Lake Como's crystalline waters, that Marco finally spoke more than essential directions. He's never brought anyone here, he said, watching my reaction as the car wound up the cypress-lined drive. Not in the 5 years since he acquired it. I turned from the window to study his face. Why are you telling me this? Marco's expression remained carefully neutral. Because you should understand the position you occupy in his life, for better or worse. Which do you think it is? I asked, genuinely curious about his assessment. A ghost of a smile touched his lips, so reminiscent of his uncle that it startled me. That depends entirely on what happens next. The villa proved even more spectacular inside than out, a seamless blend of historic architecture and modern luxury. A small staff greeted us, all speaking English for my benefit, all wearing small indicators of their allegiance to Alessio. Pins, rings, or pendants similar to but distinct from mine. Sophia appeared from within, her familiar face a welcome sight amidst so much strangeness. "Miss Eliana, welcome. I'll show you to your rooms." The suite prepared for me overlooked the lake, with a private terrace and sumptuous furnishings that somehow perfectly matched my taste, despite never having discussed such preferences. My clothes, a mix of familiar items from my apartment and new pieces in the same style, had been unpacked and arranged in a walk-in closet larger than my entire bedroom in Chicago. "There's a phone on the nightstand," Sophia explained as she showed me around. "It connects only to the house and to Mr. Ricci's secure line. For your safety, please don't try to use any other communication devices while you're here." The gentle reminder of my gilded cage didn't escape me. "How long has Alessio owned this place?" 5 years, she replied, confirming Marco's earlier comment. "He comes here when he needs solitude. Very few people know of its existence. Yet he's sent me here," I mused. More to myself than to her. Sophia's expression softened with something like sympathy. "Mr. Ricci protects what he values, Miss Eliana, sometimes at great personal cost." The days passed in strange isolation. The estate grounds were extensive but thoroughly secured, allowing me limited freedom to explore gardens and shoreline paths under the watchful eyes of security personnel who materialized whenever I ventured outdoors. Books, films, and art supplies appeared in my rooms, thoughtful distractions I recognized as Alessio's doing. Each evening, the phone would ring precisely at 8 o'clock. Alessio's voice, thousands of miles away, would inquire about my day, my comfort, my needs, everything except what I truly wanted to know. When would this exile end? On the 4th night, the pattern changed. No call came at 8. By 10, anxiety had me pacing the terrace, imagination conjuring increasingly terrible scenarios involving Rossi and Alessio's fate. Just after midnight, as I finally prepared for bed with resignation, a commotion outside drew me to the window. Headlights swept the driveway as several vehicles approached. Security personnel materialized from the darkness, positions alert but not alarmed, suggesting expected arrivals rather than threats. I slipped on a robe over my nightgown and ventured into the hallway, drawn by voices speaking rapid Italian downstairs. Sophia appeared from her quarters, hair disheveled from sleep. "Return to your room, Miss Eliana," she urged, her expression tense. "Please." "Is it Alessio?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Before she could respond, the front door opened below, and I leaned over the balustrade to see Alessio himself enter, flanked by Marco and 2 security men I recognized from Chicago. Even from above, I could see the weariness in his posture, the careful way he held himself suggesting injury or pain. He looked up, as though sensing my presence, our eyes meeting across the distance. Something in his expression shifted, hardness giving way to something softer, more vulnerable. Without a word to his companions, he moved toward the stairs. Sophia discreetly disappeared as Alessio reached the landing, leaving us alone in the dimly lit hallway. Up close, the evidence of what he'd been doing was unmistakable. A healing cut across his cheekbone, bruising at his temple, knuckles raw and scabbed. He'd changed from his usual impeccable suits to dark clothing that concealed whatever other injuries he might carry. "You should be sleeping," he said, echoing his words from nights ago in Chicago. "Is it over?" I asked, ignoring his gentle rebuke. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Yes." That single syllable contained multitudes. Finality, victory, cost. I didn't ask for details, uncertain whether my reluctance stemmed from moral qualms or self-preservation. "Were you hurt?" I reached toward the cut on his face, stopping just short of touching him. "Nothing serious." He captured my hand, his thumb brushing over the ruby ring he'd given me. "You're still wearing it. You told me to," I reminded him. Something shifted in his expression. "And do you always do as you're told, Eliana?" "Rarely," I admitted. But this seemed important to you. It was. His voice softened as he tugged gently on my hand, drawing me closer. It means more than you know to see it on your finger. We stood in silence, the weight of unspoken words hanging between us. So much had changed in the weeks since that night at Cafe Milano. I had changed, my understanding of the world and my place in it transformed by proximity to this dangerous, complicated man. What happens now? I finally asked, the question encompassing far more than our immediate future. Alessio's free hand rose to cut my face, thumb tracing my cheekbone in that now familiar gesture. Now we have choices, Eliana. Real ones, not forced by circumstance or threat. What choices? I whispered, pulse quickening under his touch. You can return to Chicago, to a life not unlike your old one, but with my protection ensuring your comfort and safety from a distance. His eyes held mine, searching. Or you can stay, with me. Not as my employee or my ward, but as something more. The offer hung between us, tempting and terrifying in equal measure. And if I choose to go back, then I'll respect your decision. The words clearly cost him, belied by the tightening of his fingers against mine. Though I would hope you might permit me to visit occasionally. And if I stay? I asked, already knowing my decision but needing to understand what it meant. Instead of answering with words, he closed the remaining distance between us. His lips found mine with gentle pressure that quickly gave way to something more demanding as my response encouraged him. The kiss deepened, his arms drawing me against him with careful attention to his injuries, yet unmistakable possession. When we finally parted, both breathless, he pressed his forehead to mine. If you stay, you accept all of me, Eliana, the businessman and the monster. I won't pretend to be something I'm not. I don't want pretense, I whispered, fingers tracing the line of his jaw. I want truth between us, even when it's difficult. His smile transformed his face, years falling away as relief and something dangerously close to joy replaced the guarded control I'd grown accustomed to. Then stay, choose me, knowing exactly who and what I am. In that moment, standing in the hushed hallway of a villa overlooking moonlit waters, I made my choice, not from fear or obligation, but from the recognition of something rare and precious forming between us, a connection forged in violence and danger, yet evolving into something that might, with care and honesty, become love. I choose you, I said simply. All of you. His arms tightened around me, the embrace of a man who had faced death and returned victorious to claim what he considered his. As his lips found mine once more, I understood that in saving Alessio Ricci that night in the restaurant, I had not lost my freedom. I had found a different kind, one where protection and possession, danger and devotion, existed in perfect, complicated balance. The bullet that had brought us together had changed everything, marking the end of one life and the beginning of another, not as victim and savior, nor captor and captive, but as equals joined by choice and circumstance. A waitress and a mafia boss, finding in each other the missing pieces neither knew they sought until fate intervened with gunpowder and blood.